Alright, hey everybody, welcome back to another Live in the Wellness Garden. Apologies for the bit of a late start. This topic does require a little bit of extra prep. We have one of our new student assistants, Matthew, who we'll be introducing you all to, getting the potatoes for this ready right now in the MMC office. So he's going to be coming out with our potatoes soon, which is going to feed our microorganisms, but we'll talk a little bit about indigenous microorganisms. But before we get into that, I want to give a couple updates on the garden, so check this out. Here's the wellness garden. Fall is in full swing now. A lot of our warm weather crops are starting to go to sleep a little bit. We're beginning to think about harvesting this sugarcane right here. As soon as we really get that chilly weather, that's when we are going to be cutting the sugarcane down. We are actually going to be cutting it all the way to the ground, except I might leave one stalk for propagation in the spring. Probably just like a nice healthy stalk that we can use to make more sugarcane plants, because sugarcane is very easy to propagate. But we might cover harvesting sugarcane in a future live, so stay tuned. We have our pigeon peas going to seed and fruit right here. You can see we're allowing this one to set seed, and a couple of the other ones over there, they're droopy right now because of the rain, but hopefully they perk back up and make a good seed crop. I really want to grow a lot more pigeon peas and donate some of these to the food pantry as well, because pigeon peas are awesome. And the cool thing about this plant is when the pods are dry, it rattles. Makes more of a rattling sound when it's dry, but it still sounds pretty cool. Yeah, so we're starting to reset a lot of our beds as well. So this bed has been reset to a fall-winter polyculture. So this row is dill and garlic. This is lettuce and walking stick kale. This is potatoes, onions, and garlic. And this is spinach and cilantro. And hopefully the seeds come up soon. So that is what we have growing on over here. We got some potatoes and fava beans in right here. Since the sorrel kind of died back, we opened up a bit of space for those guys. Over here we have onions, carrots, and cauliflower. You can see there's the cauliflower. Here's our onions, and then the carrots are just starting to come up. In this bed right here we have broccolini, potatoes, fava beans, parsley, and beets. So we've got our parsley right here from transplant from the soil blocks. We've got our beets just poking through, and there's our broccolini, and the potatoes will probably start sprouting pretty soon. No signs of them yet, but they do take some time. But once they're up, boy, do they grow. Potatoes are awesome. We gave our moringa a nice harvest, left some leaf biomass on the trees, because there's probably still going to grow a little bit before they go to sleep, and then we're going to lop off the tops and use them as living trellises for the peas that are growing underneath. Have some garlic coming up right here. These are pretty much like garlic beds. We might pop in a couple more, but for now this is good. So got some pigeon peas growing in here too. These ones we're going to be managing for biomass. Yarrow's perking up, lemon verbena's perking up, and got some more cauliflower here, some celery, some radishes, and some onions. And there's our cassava. Still growing, not looking to go to sleep yet. But we'll see. Alright, so that's a garden tour. Let's talk a bit about indigenous microorganisms. So this is a topic that we had covered before, and it's a topic that I want to cover periodically, because a healthy soil microbiome is literally the life force that drives a garden, right? Especially a regenerative garden. Whenever you're looking to, I guess, garden in a natural and wholesome way. I don't want to use the term natural too much, because we are nature. But, whenever you want to garden in a way that sort of like, brings us closer to the earth, we need to make sure that we're working with the soil microbiome and we're cultivating a healthy soil microbiome. And in order to have a healthy soil microbiome, we have to be able to introduce good microbes, right? So there's a really easy way to do that. You can just take, you can take a sample of some kind of material that has a good biological profile, and then you can multiply those microorganisms out in a liquid form. And so that's what we're going to be talking about how to do today. It's very easy, and I highly recommend everyone does it, right? So let's go over the supplies that we need. We are going to need a 20-gallon trash can. I recommend using 20-gallon trash cans or larger, 20 to 30 gallons. Maybe even if you need to make a bigger batch, do a 55-gallon drum. We're going to need the lid. So lid right there. We're going to need some kind of stick. So this bamboo pole will suffice. We're going to need 2 paint strainers. So paint strainers. And we're going to need rocks in the bottom. You can see the rocks right there. Rocks. And then we are going to need some sea salt. And Ellie, why don't you get the sea salt? And I don't think we have our scale with us today. I don't know what happened to our scale, so we'll have to eyeball it this time and see how it goes. About 60 grams. And then we're going to need potatoes, which our new student assistant Matthew is preparing right now. He should be out soon. So before we get going, I want to talk a little bit about what indigenous microorganisms are and why we should seek to encourage indigenous microorganisms and a healthy population of them in our gardens. So, as you may know, as we've talked about, soil is a living superorganism, right? And it is an ecosystem comprised of a huge diversity of life forms, right? Both, visible to the naked eye because they're large enough to see, and invisible because they are microscopic, right? These organisms sort of like work symbiotically with the plants to facilitate proper nutrient transport and cycling, retention and storage of water, protection from pests and diseases, structuring of soil, right? Getting the soil to like the right tilth, the right drainage, and getting it to a state where it is fecund and healthy and can support abundant plant life. It's really the microorganisms that are responsible for this. Now, if you go to a garden center, you can buy effective microorganisms, you can buy worm tea, like especially one of those boutique ones, what these are is these are these soil microorganisms that have been either cultivated on a farm off somewhere or in a lab, right? And so you can apply these you can buy these microorganisms, right? They're usually pretty expensive, and you can apply them to your soil, and you might get the benefits for like a season. But since these microorganisms are not adapted to the specific conditions of your garden, they're not going to thrive and proliferate as much as indigenous microorganisms. That is, the microorganisms that thrive in your location, your local soil biology. And so using this method, that's what we're able to propagate. And when we apply this soil biology into our garden soil, then we will see plant health increase, we will see soil health increase. They'll pretty much get the engine of soil optimized and going and get the engine of soil sort of like working and running as best as it can possibly run. That's what indigenous microorganisms can do for us. And not only that, because they are adapted to the exact conditions of our garden, they will reproduce and proliferate year after year after year after year. And so like our garden may only really need like, periodic or even like a couple applications to establish a healthy soil microbiome. Now, if you apply an indigenous microorganism solution or amendment regularly, then it is beneficial to your garden, of course. You're kind of like replenishing the soil biology, stimulating what biology already exists, and then just like stimulating the action of the soil food web and the life processes that occur within soil, right? And so if we apply it regularly, it's beneficial too, especially if we apply it with a fertilizer, which is what we're going to do, because they can help to break down the fertilizer and make it available to the plants more quickly. So that's the reason why we're making this solution today, is because we are going to be doing a round of fertilizing soon. So what is the solution? There are different ways to collect and prepare indigenous microorganisms. If you have a compost pile, eventually they'll make their way into your compost pile, right? You will have like a good microbiome in your garden over time if you're just practicing, if you just have like good organic gardening protocols, right? Especially if you're doing like no-till or low-till, you're doing the deep mulch beds like we do. All of these soil health practices will eventually encourage the indigenous microorganisms to colonize and proliferate in your garden, right? We can speed up this process by brewing an indigenous microorganism solution, right? And so this is a method for cultivating indigenous microorganisms in a liquid form. There are other methods for cultivating like solid soil amendments like compost that are very rich in these indigenous microorganisms. These methods are a lot more complicated and involved and time consuming. This method is easy. It's simple, right? It takes a little bit of prep and 2 days for the solution to brew, right? So this type of microorganism solution is called Jadam microorganism solution because it was developed as a part of the Jadam organic farming system, right? I have a great book on this that I can recommend. We'll talk about the book after we go through the process of preparing the solution, right? So Jadam microorganism solution, or JMS. So we have all of our equipment, right? So we have our stick, we have our paint strainers, we have our rocks, and all we're going to need now is dechlorinated water, sea salt, and potatoes. So why dechlorinated water? You know, obviously chlorine is a disinfectant. It kills microorganisms, and we want to maximize the abundance and biodiversity of the microorganisms that we are growing in the solution. So in order to do this, we want to make sure that our water is free of chemical disinfectants such as chlorine, and is ideally as pure as possible. I mean, you could use tap water as long as you filter out the chlorine. But, you know, if you're using rainwater, that's the best. And there's also a way to, part of the Jadam farming system includes a way to purify tap water or well water using these microorganisms. And that purified Jadam mineral water, as they call it, is the best input for this solution as well. But you can just use plain old tap water as long as you remove the chlorine. So that's what we're going to be using. Works fantastic, right? So we'll be using dechlorinated tap water. We'll be using sea salt. Think of it this way. You know, like, microorganisms, just like us, they require minerals. They require vitamins in order to carry out the various, the various molecular biochemical processes that occur in their cells, right? So, like, you know, they're going to need, like, you know, potassium, right, for like cell signaling and communication, right? You know, and like regulation and whatnot. They're going to need, you know, like they're going to need like a lot of those metals to synthesize certain enzymes that use metal ions such as like, you know, iron and magnesium and manganese as cofactors, right? And so we want to include all of that in our solution. And one of the easiest ways to get a broad diversity of minerals into our solution is by adding sea salt, right? So we're going to add 60 grams for a 20-gallon batch. And that will create a solution that once we dilute it is totally safe to apply on soil. Don't worry about salting your soil if you're doing this. You know, when we prepare and dilute the final solution that is applied as a soil drench, it is only 10% of the limit for sodium, and the sodium concentrations are only about 10% of like, you know, what is considered to be the maximum safe limit for plants in soil. So we're totally fine to apply it. So then we have our potatoes, right? And so potatoes contain lots of carbohydrates, you know, starches. And, you know, what do microbes love to eat? Carbohydrates. And so this is their food source. This is where they're going to be getting their calories, right? Sort of like how we get a lot of calories by eating potatoes. And potatoes, we want to use potatoes because when they are broken down by the microorganisms, unlike things such as sugar or molasses, it maintains a slightly acidic pH of about 6.5 in the solution. And this is the ideal pH for growing most of our vegetable crops, right? So that's why we use potatoes. We should be getting the potatoes soon. Oh, cool, we found a scale.
I found a scale, but I did not find the sea salt.
No sea salt? Just Epsom salt? We'll locate sea salt, don't worry. It might be. It should be here. I don't know where it would have gone, so because I didn't take it anywhere. So, let me see. We're gonna find the sea salt real quick, and then I'll talk about how we get our microbes. Are you checking this thing?
Yeah. I just see cornmeal, borax.
I have it. Okay, well, you know, I think we can have the sea salt later if there's no sea salt around.
Alright,
Maybe I took it out over there.
Okay, you want me to go run over there and check?
No, not. It wouldn't be over there. It might be over here.
Oh.
I feel like I took it out for some reason.
Okay.
Recently. Let me see. It might be over here too. It might be with the rest of the equipment. We'll locate some sea salt, and if we don't happen to not have it here for some reason right now, then we'll just prepare the solution without the sea salt for demonstration purposes and add it later. It's not a big deal. This stuff is not an exact science. Let's see. One moment. Yeah, I don't think we have any. So we'll head over to. I'll head over to the store later and get some sea salt. And for now, this is totally fine. So yeah. So let's talk about where we're going to get our microorganisms, right? So think of it this way: the best population of like microorganisms you can find would be out in a healthy ecosystem, right? Like especially a healthy forest ecosystem, because leaf litter from trees, especially like any leaf litter really. Will be broken down by the broadest diversity of microbes, right? Leaf litter kind of has a little bit of everything. It has stuff for the bacteria, it has stuff for the fungi, it has stuff for the yeast, it has stuff for all of the higher trophic level microorganisms. The worms will eat it, so like, that leaf compost that you can find in a forest, is the best material to use. And you're going to want to use about 1 to 2 kilograms of it for a 20-gallon batch. Now, I don't like to go out into like, a native forest and collect a bunch of leaf mold soil from under the leaf litter, right? I don't want to be removing topsoil from a native woodland. That can be damaging to the ecosystem, right? So instead, what we do is we make this leaf compost on site. It's called leaf mold compost. And the stuff that you make in your garden, and as long as you introduce like a diversity of materials, like different kinds of leaves, you might even like, get a little bit of that leaf mold soil from like, the forested environment and toss it into your leaf mold pile when you're starting it to get that biology in there. Like just a couple samples from like different locations around you, plus leaves. We just use leaves that we get off of the street, because people leave their leaves out, in bags. So we use that. And so after a year, ideally a year or more, you'll get this amazing material. I'll show it to you. So check this out. And this stuff isn't as aged as it should be, so we probably won't get like as good of a batch as we could otherwise, but we'll still get like a really decent batch of this stuff. So check this out. This is leaf mold compost. And this stuff is like the pixie dust of regenerative gardening. It is like so rich in these beneficial indigenous microorganisms. And when we feed them potatoes and sea salt, they will propagate out. The microorganisms in here will propagate out in the solution like crazy. And that's exactly what we want. And at the end of about 2 days, we will end up with this liquid, kind of like a compost tea, right? That has billions of these indigenous microorganisms swimming around in it per milliliter. It's like a tiny amount of solution, right? And so like that just gives you an idea of how like potent and like rich in these beneficial indigenous microorganisms this solution is. It's pretty much some of the most powerful stuff you can make, to improve the health of your soil, the health of your garden. You can apply it as a foliar spray. It can help to discourage fungal diseases such as powdery mildew. You want to mix it with like a wetting agent such as like a unscented Castile soap for that. But it's like extremely powerful stuff. And it can take like a dead soil, like dirt, and when you plant some seeds in it and apply some of this solution, all of a sudden the plants will grow. It's like really incredible what this stuff can do. It's like magic. It's like a magic potion, right? So we'll make some. All right. So the first thing we are going to do is we're just going to clean out this barrel here. It has some residue in it, so we're just going to hose it off. Hey, Nelly. Okay. This hose is all tangled up, but yeah, we're just gonna give it like a nice little wash, and the residue in here is good stuff too. This had some solution in it recently, so we can use that residue as kind of like a liquid fertilizer type situation. And so we'll pick a plant and we'll pour it on there, basically. And I know people are like, oh my god, germs, you know, but like this stuff is totally safe. Just don't let like poop or stuff or something like that get in there, you know? Alright, so we are going to fill her up with water. So, just so you know, this is the kind of filter that we use to remove chlorine. You can attach this onto like a hose faucet, and it'll take out most of the chlorine. They last for like a couple months. You can also use vitamin C to remove chlorine. If you add 1 gram of vitamin C for 100 gallons of water, so a 20-gallon batch, you'll want to add 200 milligrams of vitamin C. And just like the vitamin C crystals you can pick up at any pharmacy, you know, that's a great thing about like this, like ultra low cost, like organic, natural farming. It's simple, you know, like there's not a lot of like, you know, dialing in you really have to do. You just have to like, just practice making a good microorganism solution and applying it, you know. And so this stuff also really helps to encourage the root growth. So if you, apply it before planting, then those microorganisms will stimulate the growth and elongation of the roots of whatever seeds and transplants you put in, right? So next what we're going to do, we are going, while that's filling, and we'll just stir in the sea salt later once we can get our hands on some. So I'm going to make sure that these bags are empty of like any previous materials. Because there is some residue in here. And you know, I'll just toss it under the fruit trees or something, it'll break down. And we'll just clean off these paint stranders a bit. So I'm gonna toss this residue under the fruit tree. Potatoes are ready? First batch of potatoes. I was wondering where you went. That's fine if it's warm, you know, that'll warm up the solution since it's chilly out.
Put this right because I add some kitchen.
Oh yes, sea salt.
Okay.
That looks like our sea salt.
Okay. Well, it's from the kitchen.
It might not be I don't think it's ours.
Okay.
I think I know what happened to the other one. I'll get some, don't worry. But yeah, we can use this for now. So we have located sea salt. Excellent. So yeah, while that fills, what I'm going to go ahead and do, give it the rinsing first, is we're going to go ahead and fill this bag up with roughly 1 to 2 kilograms of leaf mold compost. And I can see there are some like topsoil particles in here too, so like we might get some more of the stuff, more of the microorganisms that are responsible for like the mineralization of the rock particles in soil, which basically means the biochemical liberation of the nutrients from these rock particles. So that could be a good thing, you know, like it's going to be more similar to like, you know, that forest floor soil, right? So yeah, we could probably use about. Are you gonna weigh out the sea salt? All right, 60 grams. I'm gonna turn off the water, and we'll finish filling it up once we have our sea salt weighed out. So yeah, like, you know, you don't need too much of this stuff. I mean, it's a little bit goes a long way. Think of it this way, like, you know, you just want enough so that the biology inside of the leaf mold is what becomes dominant. So leaf mold compost is super easy to make, by the way. All you got to do is collect a bunch of leaves in the fall, shred them up. We use like a leaf vacuum here that shreds the leaves into bits, and then put them in like your standard compost bin. Keep it moist and don't turn it at all. And after 6 months, you'll have a material that is somewhat usable, and after a year, you'll have a really good quality leaf mold compost that you can then use to start these solutions. And so we always be sure to maintain a leaf mold pile here, so that we have leaf mold on hand to start solutions. We also use it in our seed starting mixes because it's so rich in biology and it has some nutrients as well. It's not very nutrient dense like a regular hot compost, but it does have some minerals in it, you know. Yeah, we could just, here. There's our sea salt. So you're going to want to use uniodized salt and with no caking agents. So 100% pure sea salt. If it has iodine or caking agents in it, it can interfere with the growth of the bacteria, and you can get like, and of the microbes, I should say, and you can get like, you know, a microbiological profile that you may not want, right? So we want to avoid using anything but pure sea salt. If you don't have pure sea salt on hand, you can also use pure rock salt. Because, you know, most rock salt originally came from the sea. So it's basically the same, but, you know, sea salt is the best. Alrighty, so this is filling up. And so here's what we do then. We want to try and minimize the particulates in the solution. But we're going to begin suspending our bags in the solution. And these are paint strainers you could buy at any old hardware store. I mean, like, the cost of inputs for this, to make this solution, is about $5. The rest of it's just equipment that you'll have forever. Because it costs $5 for a bag of organic potatoes. We're using about 2 kilos of potatoes here. And the sea salt, the cost of this, for like a whole thing of sea salt, that'll last you like years for this, if you're making this for a small garden, will cost you $5. So this is so like crazy cheap to make. That's why the system this comes from is called Jadam Ultra Low Cost Organic Farming. So it is ultra low cost. And there's another method that we talked about in a previous video about the to make fertilizer that was developed as a part of the Jadam system, right? And we have some of that cooking now, and then we're going to cook up some more pretty soon with some food waste. But yeah, so we want to get this sort of like incorporated into the water. The idea is to get like the finer particles within the leaf mold compost incorporated, so that the microorganisms are like suspended in the water. Then the potatoes are on the way. So this works the best if you can like blend up the potatoes in a blender, and like I made a batch I made a batch using blended potatoes, and oh my god, that was the best batch I ever made. It was like, it was frothing like crazy, because when it starts to like, when it's mature and ready to use, it's gonna have like a bunch of foam on top from the action of the microorganisms, because they, you know, produce, you know, various kinds of like gases and stuff and other compounds that make this foamy substance, right? So we're going to continue incorporating that, and this water is pretty cold, so we may want to make sure that we're in a bit more sun here. We may move the solution. If it's really hot outside, I'll make it in the shade. If it's cooler out, I'm going to put it in the sun, you know, to make sure that that the water temperature stays, you know, warm. You know, you want it above 68 ideally, but, you know, think of it this way. If it's cooler, then you're going to be breeding microorganisms that are adapted better to the cooler temperatures you have right now. You know, because the microorganisms that we are cultivating in this solution are the ones adapted to our ambient temperature, our precipitation patterns, you know, our air pressure, our humidity, all of those factors, right? You know, it is that specific. And so this is a customized microbe solution that we can then apply to our soil to have, like, to get, like, you know, a soil, like a biological profile in our soil that is, like, perfectly suited to our environment. It, right? So that's why, you know, we use the indigenous microorganisms is because of you know, their adaptation to our conditions, right? we're just about there. So yeah, we're gonna let it fill up. And we do have some new tools that we are going to be using to apply this stuff, and we'll talk about that too. Because you can't apply it's like really time consuming to apply this by hand, and you can't apply it with like a traditional like garden sprayer. You have to use like a specific one. But we'll talk about that. So yeah, there's our microbes, and let's get our potatoes. Bag of rocks. Thank you, Nelly. Are the other ones taking a long time?
Yeah. You want me to go check?
Yeah, and so,
Alright.
yeah, thanks. So these are just like cooked potatoes. Just make sure they're organic. You do not want to use conventionally grown potatoes because they are oftentimes treated with pesticides and sprout inhibitors. And this stuff is detrimental to the soil microbiome, so we want to avoid that stuff. Ideally, you will use potatoes that you grew, because they'll already have a lot of that biology on it, right? And so this solution is especially useful if you're starting a brand new garden, because it'll introduce that healthy soil biology to your new garden, right? And it won't take, instead of having it take years to develop on its own. And so this solution can greatly accelerate the development of a healthy soil in your garden. So we're going to massage the potatoes into the water, right? And as I said, like, since it's cool out, it's we're going to want to try and get the water to be a bit warmer. You can put a heater in it if you want, but we're not going to do that. It should still work. It just might take a bit longer because the microorganisms that proliferate at colder temperatures have slower metabolisms. We might not get as active of a solution, but that's okay. That's just how it is. But yeah, like if you want to warm it up a bit more and then get the water a bit warmer, then you'll massage the potatoes into the solution while they're still hot, and that'll raise the temperature a little bit. And so the idea is to get the potatoes to pretty much melt away and dissolve into the water, right? We can already see the mass of the potatoes is beginning to decrease in here. And if you use blended potatoes, you'll basically be left over with just the skins, and you'll get the maximum amount of potato starch suspended in the water, and that's really what you want. But this will suffice too. But yeah, this is one of my secrets is to how we got the soil to be so healthy here in the Wellness Garden, is by using this preparation periodically. And you'll see, even if you use it in a totally totally dead compacted soil, after a couple days you'll see a change. The soil will suddenly become more crumbly, more friable, and that's the work of the microorganisms. I've seen it happen many times. Also, what you'll see after you apply it is you might see if you apply it in the soil that is well mulched, then you'll probably see a fungal bloom within the mulch, which is beneficial as well. You want to have lots of fungi around. But a lot of the microorganisms that you're breeding in this solution are going to be bacteriobes. And so facultative anaerobes are bacteria that do best in a lower oxygen environment, but are able to survive and do well in an oxygenated environment. So that's our lactobacillus, our acetobacter, and we're talking about the world of facultative fungi, facultative anaerobic fungi, a lot of yeasts, some molds, that kind of stuff that kind of stuff. So, and a lot of our facultative anaerobes are very beneficial, especially for like young soils. It's more like a lot of the obligate anaerobes that are pathogens. That is, one organisms that require an anaerobic environment. But even a lot of the anaerobes, the obligate anaerobes, are beneficial. So we got all of our potatoes.
Mm-hmm. Right there.
Matthew, why don't you come over here? Sorry, yeah, no, it's all good. So we're going to introduce you guys to Matthew, our newest addition to the Let's Grow Healthy team. So you don't mind being on camera?
I don't care.
All right.
Hello.
This is Matthew. He joined us just last week. And this is your first time joining us while we're making a JMS, huh?
Yes.
So I will give you the SparkNotes version right now. Matthew, and I will we'll talk about this in detail later. So basically what we're making here is a solution of indigenous microorganisms. And indigenous microorganisms are the engines that make all of the local soils around us healthy and tick, right? You know, they're the biological engines of like our local soils. And so we can propagate these microorganisms in liquid form, you know, by using the stuff that I had you collect the other day. Because that's where the microorganisms live. You know, they especially love to live in like leaf mold, right? The decomposed like leaf litter. That's like their favorite place to be. And we can feed them potatoes as carbohydrates and sea salt as minerals. And we let them brew in this solution for 2 days, and then we have an extremely potent microbial inoculant that contains billions of microorganisms per milliliter of water. And when we apply this to the soil, it's like a magic potion that can turn around even the unhealthiest of soils. Cement, like literal like rock hard compacted cement like soil, I've seen it turn that around after like one or a couple applications in like a cover crop. This stuff is pretty much like the secret to healthy soil. So and it's very easy to make. So we're massaging the potatoes into the water, pretty much as good as we're going to get these ones. Getting all of those wonderful complex carbohydrates into the water. And again, this costs about $5 to make. Think about how much a bottle of Bugs in a Jug are going to cost. Like if you're buying like the bottled worm tea, like I've seen like 16-ounce bottles of effective microorganisms going for like $70, $80 online. And this product is going to be far superior to that. So it's much better if you can make this stuff. And you can make it in a smaller scale too. You don't have to like have this big old honkin' 20-gallon trash can to make it. I've made it many times in a 5-gallon bucket. But what I find is that if you make it in like, you know, a larger container, you know, then since that container has a larger volume of water, it's going to have more thermal mass, and there's going to be less fluctuations in temperature within the container, and that's going to produce a higher quality, more active solution. And that's what we want. You know, we don't want those fluctuations. Living organisms do not like rapid fluctuations in their conditions. You know, you're not going to be able to get like as good of like, you know, an end product if the temperature is fluctuating wildly. So that's why I'd say, you know, use a big container if you can, but, you know, if you can't, it's totally fine to use a smaller container. This kind of 5-gallon bucket works. You're just going to want to scale down the amount of potatoes and sea salt that you add, and that's it. So for a 5-gallon recipe, yeah, it's like 15 grams of sea salt and like 4 good-sized russet potatoes, like 3 or 4 good-sized russet potatoes. That'll do it. You can use any kind of potato as long as it's organic, and if you don't have potatoes on hand, organic sweet potatoes work fine, and organic beets work fine, and organic turnips work fine. Just make sure that they're fully cooked because you want to be able to mash them up like this. Now we're getting there. This is why I want to get us a blender, because we'll be able to make much better stuff. Yeah, when I used the blender recently to make one of these, the end product was crazy. Like the foam was like almost pouring out over the top of the bucket, of the trash can. And it was like, it smelled so great. Because this stuff like develops characteristic odor when it's mature. Like right now it doesn't smell like much. It might smell slightly like potatoes, but in about 2 days it's going to have a really funky odor to it. And that's going to be the smell of the microorganisms. And don't worry, you'll get to apply one of these, Matthew.
Great. I can't wait for this funky smell.
Well, I'm not going to make you do it if you don't like funky smells, but
I'll breathe through my mouth.
It's better than the leaf mold.
oh, then the JLF.
Yeah,
You smelled that stuff. That stuff was rank, huh?
It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, this is like way better.
Oh,
I
okay.
consider this smell to be like somewhat pleasant, actually, of this stuff.
It's not like.
It's like cheesy kind of and vinegary.
Okay, now I'm curious. So.
Yeah.
Cheesy.
If you're able to make it on Friday before we apply this stuff, you can smell it. If you can somehow make it.
Yeah, but it's
No pressure. You don't have to come in on Friday, or even drop by. Like I'm not saying come work on Friday so you can smell this stuff. I'm saying come visit if you want to smell it.
You're gonna pay him an hour.
Yeah,
just
like,
to
you know,
come and smell.
here's the thing about, like, you know, good gardeners. You know, good gardeners understand that their nose is one of their most effective tools. I don't even have that keen of a sense of smell, but I use my nose in the garden all the time to, like, assess. Like, I can smell, like, how healthy a soil is, you know, by like, you know, sniffing it. I can kind of, like, get a sense of, like, where that soil is at, like, in terms of its, like, microbiome by smelling it. I can get a sense of, like, how good a compost is by smelling it. I can get a sense of, like, how finished it is, you know, like, what like, you know, whether there's anything harmful in there, you know. You can use your nose to discern all of these things. Alright, I'm not sure how much more progress we're going to get to make here. But we'll be doing this with the JLF on Friday,
Okay.
with the sprayer.
I want to see it spray in action. I haven't seen
Unfortunately,
it
it's a bit leaky,
yet. Yeah.
but, you know, it works well. It
If
works
it's-
really well.
Yeah, if it's better than the other methods, by all means, please.
Yeah, like we'll be able to go through all of this in like 30 minutes.
Nice.
Or like most of it. I mean, maybe not all of it, but like, you know, we'll be able to go through like under an hour.
Okay.
And like normally if you're doing this by hand, like with a watering can, it's like 2 hours to apply it all.
It is, yeah.
But like, you know, with the sprayer, it's definitely like less.
Have you noticed it get clogged or anything?
A little bit.
Okay.
It doesn't have that many clogging issues, and don't worry, viewers, we'll talk about the sprayer in a second. I just want to make sure that we get this in. And so yeah, like it's much better if you can blend this, because you know, it'll like dissolve into the water like a lot faster. But you know, this system of farming, the Jadam system, is practiced throughout Korea, and now it's been spreading to other parts of the world. It was originally developed in Korea, sort of like loosely based on traditional Korean farming techniques that have been around for thousands of years. But now, like the folks who developed this, Young Sang Cho and his institute have been applying a modern understanding of like agronomy and microbiology and like plant pathology and chemistry to like develop this system. And so we have this awesome method for cultivating the microorganisms our soil needs to be healthy. The other methods are difficult. It involves leaving a box of rice out in the woods for a week and like making 5 different compost piles and all that stuff. So we're not going to do that here. We simply do not have the space. And this stuff works great. All right, so we are done. We are now going to suspend both of the bags in the middle of the solution. Why in the middle? You know, and also why is there no bubbler? Like, you know, for those of you who garden, if you've made a compost tea, you'll know, oh, you're supposed to like use a bubbler to ensure that there's oxygen. Well, you know, if we don't use a bubbler, then we're going to be growing a more diverse array of microorganisms. There will be some aerobic microbes in there, and there will be some anaerobes in there. So we're basically, you know, trying to capture the broadest cross section of our sample as possible, right? As humanly possible, and it'll be present throughout this solution, right? So in order to do that, you know, we want to facilitate, you know, a much slower turning over and mixing of the solution. And so by suspending these bags in the center, it'll encourage a vortex current to develop, because the heat of the sun and the heat of the metabolism of the microorganisms as they grow and reproduce, that's going to produce a little bit of heat, and that heat will drive a very slow convection current, like sort of like, you know, the vortex current. And that will allow for a slow, even mixing of the solution as it brews. And so this is done. We're going to leave it for 2 days approximately. We'll check it on Friday. It might not be ready until Saturday, in which case I hope I don't have to go in on Saturday and apply this. I'm not even sure if I have time. But we'll probably just end up like, you know, using what we have on Friday. And that's it. That's how you make JMS, Jadam Microorganism Solution. The magic potion for your soil. Yeah, we do apply this stuff periodically, especially if we are about to plant or have recently planted, it'll help you cultivate the best soil that you possibly can. All right, so let's talk about how we're going to apply it now. So all I got to do at this point is cover it up and wait. So in the past, we have applied it just using like a watering can, And so what we'll do is like we'll dilute it 1 part of solution per 10 parts of dechlorinated water and apply that as a soil drench. So just like water it in. But that's extremely time consuming. Like, to be adding basically 200 gallons of solution with a watering can. So I came up with this device that's basically a modified backpack sprayer, right? So modified thank you, Nelly, this backpack sprayer right here. This is a 15 liter sprayer. So each one of these will make 150 liters of solution, or 40 gallons, right? We have the pipe coming off, and what I did was I modified this and changed it from a pressure feed to a gravity feed. And then we have this 1 to 16, it's actually not 1 to 10 for this one, it's 1 to 16, but a 1 to 16 Venturi injector, which will pull the solution from the tank as long as you hold the injector below the height of the solution in the tank, and then spray that solution out onto the soil. And then this right here is one of our dechlorinators, so that the water coming in is free of chlorine. And we basically just like spray it around the garden, get the soil nice and soaked with it. What we'll do is we'll probably do like 2 parts of the solution and 1 part of the fertilizer. And you guys know the fertilizer. We'll have a look at this. So we talked about the fertilizer in some of our last videos. These are our Jadam liquid fertilizer buckets. So you can see, like, here's our one that we've had for almost a year now. And these just keep going. So that one is the just like plant biomass one. Ooh, smells stinky. And then this is another one that we're doing that's like a phosphate JLF, because we need to get some phosphorus in the soil. It's just like rock phosphate and plant material. Then that one's really cooking. You can see all the molds in there. And that's a really good sign. So we have that one, and then we're going to do another one that's going to be a bit more of a potent liquid fertilizer that we're making out of food waste. And I brought a bunch of my compostables and leftover, it's going to be mostly like vegetable waste, and like leftover, like, pumpkins from Halloween and stuff, and like, the innards of pumpkins. We're going to make that into a JLF. So if you have pumpkins, please, that you're looking to get rid of after Halloween, if you have jack-o'-lanterns, please drop them by the Wellness Garden. We will take them and we will make them into fertilizer to feed our plants. All right, so that's Jadam microorganism solution, and it's good to apply that together with the fertilizer. So especially make this stuff, once again, if you're just starting your garden. Otherwise, you can apply it periodically. The best time to apply it is right before you plant. And you're supposed to apply it 4 times right before you plant for best results. But usually we just apply it once and it works great. For fruit trees, apply it ideally when they're dormant. And they will reward you with a bounty of fruit next year. Other than that, you can apply it once again as a foliar spray. So spray it on the leaves, dilute it 1 to 20 and add a little bit of wetting agent. So easiest wetting agent you can get that is suitable for this application is going to be unscented Castile soap. They sell the Dr. Bronner's everywhere. That's the stuff we use. Brand doesn't matter. As long as it's unscented, like pure Castile soap, works great. Apply that to the leaves to help discourage fungal diseases, right? So that's it. That's how you cultivate indigenous microorganisms. And we will see you next week. Hopefully we're going to be doing the mushroom bed next week. I'm still trying to get a hold of some oyster mushroom spawn, but all I got to say is that, starting a mushroom bed in your garden is probably one of the best things you can do if you want to increase the abundance and bounty of your garden even more. Because mushrooms are the one thing that grows really well in the shade. And if you start a good, healthy mushroom bed, you will get a ton of them. So really looking forward to talking about how to start a mushroom bed, hopefully in next week's live. So thank you very much, everybody. And see ya. And have a good one. 9:30 a.m. sharp next week. Catch you later.